What's up, fight freaks, and welcome back. I'm the Combat Remix, bringing the MMA Fix to diehard fans. Not someone who thinks that Zingano is a wine, though I might need to stop saying that because I'm pretty sure it is now. I'm a little late with this video, so I'll be giving my UFC 256 predictions before too much time goes by. Hey, what's up? I'm doing a video. Yeah, UFC 256. What do you mean it's tomorrow? Alright, let's get to it. First fight is Chase Hooper versus Peter Barrett. Now, although Hooper actually lost his fight against Alex Caceres, who is a veteran in the game and is no slouch whatsoever, he definitely held his own in that fight. He had his moments. I was fairly impressed with him, so I'm actually picking him to win the fight. I think he has enough skills where he can get by Peter Barrett and win the fight, at least by decision. Next fight is Batisha Torres versus Sam Hughes, and I have nothing against Hughes whatsoever, but Batisha Torres is one of the greatest female strawweights on the planet. Torres only loses to the elite of the division. There's no doubt I'm picking Torres in this fight. She's a huge favorite, and I see no reason to think that there's going to be a massive upset. Next fight, we have Gavin Tucker versus Billy Quarantillo, and originally, hands down, I was thinking I was picking Quarantillo, no problem, no questions asked, and no, not just because we're practically neighbors and I got to represent our Gracie school. The more I looked into this fight, the harder my decision became. I noticed there were a lot of similarities between these two fighters, and not just the fact that they have a nice balance of wins by both knockout and submission, but also the fact that it's not uncommon for both these fighters to get a late finish. We're not dealing with fighters who are going to coast in the third round. There's a big part of me that's leaning towards Gavin Tucker. He seems to have the more powerful strikes. He had a great fight against Sam Cecilia, and his most recent loss was against Rick Glenn, who is a great fighter. He's only lost to guys like Evan Dunham, Lance Palmer, Miles Jury, not to mention he beat Dennis Bermudez by split decision. And while I would say Gavin is probably the slightly better wrestler, Quarantillo has the better jiu-jitsu, and statistically he has better takedown defense, which I think is enough to neutralize. I was this close to picking Tucker, but ultimately I'm going with Quarantillo. And this is ultimately because I think he's going to have better shot selection and hit Tucker with the cleaner strikes. Statistically, Quarantillo has a much higher striking accuracy, at least 1.5 times. I think it's actually closer to twice as accurate. And in the famous words of Conor McGregor,
precision beats power, and timing beats speed.
Next fight we have Renato Morkano versus Rafaelfazev. Now this pick might come back to bite me. I'm picking Morkano, even though I don't think he's lived up to his full potential. I would definitely be picking Fazeev if this was a pure striking fight, considering that was pretty much his entire career before joining MMA. And we've already seen plenty of examples where pure strikers go over into MMA, and it doesn't really work out too much for them. Fazeev already has an MMA knockout loss, and the wins that he has were over opponents that I don't really consider on the same caliber as Morkano. And I'll give Fazeev all the praise in the world if he wins this fight. But I just think Morkano has a little more to give before I start counting him out. Next fight is Cub Swanson versus Daniel Pineda. Little known fact about me is that Daniel Pineda is one of my favorite fighters. I've always found him to have a very entertaining style, but now he goes up against Cub Swanson, who has one of the most entertaining styles of all of MMA. Both these fighters are pretty crazy strikers, but I would say that Cub Swanson is the more technical striker, as Pineda does have a tendency of getting a little too wild. And although sometimes he does have a tendency to get a little careless on the ground, it is typically where Pineda thrives. It seems that Pineda has matured as a fighter and really come into his own, especially in his last fight against Herbert Burns, which was an absolute amazing performance. And Swanson is very talented on the ground as well. In fact, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. But if Pineda performs like he did in his last fight, it's just enough for me to give him the edge, especially considering that Cub Swanson hasn't had a fight in 14 months. Next fight is Junior Dos Santos versus Cyril. I know many people are calling for JDS to retire. It's kind of painful to see him get knocked out so many times. And over the last couple of years, I've just been finding myself picking against him more often than not. And several times he has surprised us with wins over Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa, but now he faces an opponent who's undefeated in both MMA and kickboxing. And I'd be willing to give JDS more of a chance if this was a smaller heavyweight, but we're dealing with someone taller than JDS. He's absolutely massive, and he can strike his ass off. I'm picking Cyril in this fight, and unfortunately, I think JDS is going to suffer another knockout loss. Next fight we have Jacare Souza versus Kevin Holland, and the betting odds for this fight is pretty close. And I actually forgot that Souza was 41. That's the same age as old man Teixeira. While Souza did pretty damn good in his fight against Jan Blachowicz, who's a damn good fighter, I'm not sure what to make about the whole changing of weight classes. He went up to 205 and now he's back down to middleweight for this fight. The biggest question to ask is this fight staying on the feet or is it going to the ground? Because Souza's definitely going to win if it goes to the ground. But I'm actually going to go with the underdog and pick Kevin Holland for this fight. And I'm having a hard time thinking whether I really truly believe he's going to keep the fight on the feet, knock out Souza, or at least pick him apart to a decision, Or am I just jumping on the whole Joaquin Buckley bandwagon and the fact that Kevin Holland beat the guy who's getting all this fame right now? Regardless of what the answer is for that, I'm picking Kevin Holland. I've yet to pick against Mackenzie Dern in any of her fights. Even against Amanda Hebos, I still pick Dern. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but the point is, I don't see a reason to start picking against her now. In our co-main event, we see Tony Ferguson taking on Charles Oliveira. Now, Oliveira has some of the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC. Well, offense. He has some of the best jiu-jitsu offense. Defense, not so much. He's been guillotine choked on a number of occasions by not the best jiu-jitsu guys. But outside of pure jiu-jitsu, I don't really know what Oliveira has that's better than Tony Ferguson. Cardio? No. Technical striking? Perhaps, but I don't see that holding up. While Tony Ferguson does like to get a little wild with his strikes, he's incredibly effective. And while Ferguson's coming off a demoralizing loss to Justin Gaethje, and I'm not sure what his mindset is, it does seem a bit of a stretch for me to think that Oliveira is either going to submit him, or knock him out, or even pick him apart on the feet for 3 rounds to win a decision. And I could certainly see Oliveira catching maybe Ferguson in a guillotine like he did against Nick Lentz, one of those super tight ones that I just don't see Ferguson escaping, but I think it's a little bit of a stretch, so I gotta ultimately go with Ferguson. We come to the main event fight between Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. Now, I've been saying since 2017, before he even fought Dustin Ortiz, that Moreno was going to be a title challenger. And while he had a few setbacks, we finally come to the day where he's getting a title shot. The only question is that a reason enough for me to think he's going to win? I mean, it'd be great to say I have some sort of premonition and I saw it happening, but if it was any other fighter, I'd be picking Moreno. But Figueiredo is just a different kind of animal. First of all, he's huge for the weight class. Now, say what you will about the weight cut, but he's made it 2 consecutive times, and I'm sure it was difficult, but he had great performances in both of those fights. Now, while Moreno had a spectacular performance in his last fight, I just don't see where he's going to be able to succeed where some of the other fighters fell short. But even if Moreno could match blow for blow, I think he's just going to fall a little bit short. He doesn't quite have the same power, and the champ is just a little more skilled on the ground. As much as it pains me to be brutally honest, my pick is Figueiredo to win this fight. And literally, if it was any other fighter, I would pick Moreno to win. But the guy just turned 27, he's got plenty more years, he's going to grow, he's going to get better, and mark my words, he will be champion one day. That's my full card predictions, you guys. Let me know what you think. Sorry for the late video. It's much later than I intended it to be. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Let me know any other top 10 MMA videos you'd like me to do, any super fight matches you'd like to see. I'm the Combat Remix, bringing your MMA fix.
But what he does is he gets Kharlamov fading, or as he uses Kharlamov fading to one direction.